Protein is a critical part to helping improve your Hashimoto symptoms, but unfortunately, it's something that a lot of people still get wrong. In an effort to goose their protein intake, many people turn to protein powders. But is this actually a good strategy? Well, in today's video, we're going to talk about why protein is so important for people with Hashimoto's, how you can choose the best type of protein powder, and I'll share my thoughts on why using protein powder in the right way can actually make a big difference for you, and some of those thoughts might surprise you a bit. If this is your first time stopping by the channel, my name is Dr. Bodle. I've been in practice over 9 years, and during that time, I've helped thousands of patients to naturally improve their Hashimoto's and their hypothyroid symptoms. To do that, I help people to better understand their unique situation, determine what their root causes are, and then make nutritional, lifestyle, and supplemental choices to create a holistic healing plan that works for them. So if you like this kind of information, make sure to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell for new videos every Thursday. So why is protein so important for people with Hashimoto's? Well, when our metabolism starts to slow down, and when our body is constantly being bombarded by inflammation associated with autoimmunity, it can affect how we function in a few key ways. One of the big things that I see in a lot of my patients is a decrease in energy, a decrease in endurance, and a decreased ability to recover. In fact, many of these symptoms look very similar to people who suffer with overtraining syndrome. Now, in those situations, the stimulus or the irritant is usually due to inflammation from too much exercise. But whether that inflammation is coming from exercise or from autoimmunity, when that type of stress becomes really chronic, it's hard for our body to tolerate any additional increase in inflammation. And because of that, our body needs extra support and resources to help us get back on track and recover appropriately. The reason why I bring up the comparison to overtraining syndrome is because the people in those situations, their bodies become so depleted that their requirement for getting better changes, and so does their body's demand for protein. So no, most people with Hashimoto's are not training for the Olympic trials, but their bodies can be just as stressed. And what I've done over the years is I've looked at these two different situations, and because of the similarities in the way that our physiology is responding, I've taken what we've learned in those overtraining syndromes and, when appropriate, applied it to people who are struggling with chronic conditions. And although there's a number of different ways to do that, one of the biggest things that we can do is increase that protein intake. Essentially, we want to flood our body with an abundance of amino acids and give our body extra support to help with that recovery. This is why I make sure that my patients are getting more than the recommended daily allowance, which is only 0.8 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. Instead, I like my patients to have a target of at least 100 grams of protein per day, and some may actually need more than that. Now, in the past, I've suggested that, as much as possible, people get that protein from whole food, animal-based sources. And when it's feasible, that's still my recommendation. But the problem is, it isn't always feasible. This is where something like protein powder can actually be a big help to us. But as with any food product that is more processed, we need to be a little bit cautious and do our due diligence. Sometimes there can be certain binders or fillers that people are reactive to, and protein powder isn't going to interact with our physiology in the same way that we might get protein from something like a chicken breast or steak. This means that right from the get-go, we want to do our best to choose a protein powder that provides us a good source of protein. And navigating that can sometimes be a little bit tricky. Now, a lot of studies tend to use whey protein in their research. Now, generally speaking, whey has been shown to be easily absorbed, and it can help to improve growth and metabolic outcomes. However, whey is also a dairy product, and although some people with Hashimoto's might not have any issues with dairy, it is high on our list of suspects for a lot of people with autoimmunity. So even though it's widely available, if it was one of my patients, I'd advise them to steer clear of the whey. Next is your pea and rice-based protein blends. Now, in theory, this is something that should be relatively well tolerated by people with Hashimoto's. Some may have some issues with these alternative grains or legumes, but the processing in this situation actually might be a bit of an advantage to us. By reducing these products down to only the plant proteins, some of the additional compounds that are found in these foods can pose occasional issues for people with gastrointestinal symptoms. And although plant proteins aren't as efficiently absorbed as animal proteins, it's still unlikely to cause any sort of reaction from your immune system. So, in theory, if you find a pea or rice protein powder that has good clean ingredients and you tolerate well, then I think this would be something that would be fine for you to utilize. However, I will note that I have had some patients that have struggled with these kinds of products. Now, I'm not really sure if it's due to the protein or maybe some of the additional ingredients that have been added to the product. And I know many can include other prebiotics, probiotics, or maybe some supportive nutrients and adaptogens. And of course, any of those could potentially be in play. So, although using products with a lot of different ingredients can sometimes create this synergistic positive effect, it also leads to the creation of more variables, and sometimes those can be hard to control. So, if you do want to use a pea or rice protein, I would recommend keeping it simple and starting with a small dose to see how your body responds. Next on our list is collagen protein powders, which are very popular these days due to the fact that collagen is rich in glycine and it's one of the main components in many of our body's connective tissues. Muscle meat does not have as much glycine, and therefore, using collagen to complement our diets is thought to support things like our hair, skin, nails, and our gut. Not to mention certain aspects of our joints, which require collagen as well. Collagen, however, is not a complete protein, and it misses on one of our essential amino acids, tryptophan. So, if the only protein you were getting was collagen powder all day, every day, you might find yourself in a spot of trouble. But this is just another reason why protein powders should be used to supplement an already well thought out nutritional strategy. And if you are consuming protein from other sources, then using collagen to support that protein shouldn't be a problem. In my experience working with patients, collagen powder tends to be very well tolerated, and you get that nice benefit of extra glycine, which is something that a lot of people don't usually get from their food alone. And finally, the last protein powder that I probably use more than any of the others in my practice is hydrolyzed beef protein. Hydrolyzed beef protein is still processed, but it tends to be less processed than some of our other options. And when I look at the ingredients list for some of these products, they tend to be more simplified, almost as though they would have people with more sensitivities in mind when they were made. Hydrolyzed beef protein is just cow muscle meat that has been reduced into a powder form. And to me, it seems to be the most real equivalent, or as close as we're going to get to having real meat, while also trying to package it in a different format. Of course, I'm sure there's instances where this type of protein powder won't work for an individual. But I've been at this a long time and I've tried a lot of different things. And when I think back and compare it to other protein products that I've used over the years, hydrolyzed beef protein tends to be very effective, very well tolerated, and tolerated by the people who are most important to me, and those are people with Hashimoto's and autoimmunity. But even though some of those options might sound somewhat reasonable to you, you might be asking me, Dr. Brad, I come to you for natural strategies, and now you're throwing protein powder at me? What's the deal? And you're right. Although in the past I've shied away from things like protein powder, not wanting to mix in more production or potential chemicals or food additives for people, I've actually found that they can be quite helpful when used appropriately. So why might you want to consider using protein powder, even if it isn't 100% your jam? Well, here's 3 situations that I found to be very responsive to protein powder support when working with patients in my practice. The first is for people who have significant digestive symptoms, especially those who have a history or have active acid reflux, as well as those who might have a low body weight due to the digestive complications. In these scenarios, these people likely need more protein, but due to digestive changes and malabsorption, they're not getting enough. But if you try to stuff a lot of protein into a digestive tract that already isn't breaking things down very efficiently, you're probably asking for trouble and it could make things worse. So, to bypass putting extra stress and demand on that system, we can use protein powder to increase our protein intake, support healing and recovery, and to make sure our metabolism has what it needs, while we also do some strategies concurrently to improve our digestive capacity. Our next scenario where protein powder can be very effective is for people who have very unstable fuel systems. They're sensitive to fluctuations in blood sugar, and they have changes in the efficiency of their adrenal and cortisol systems. Essentially, this is our group of people that become very symptomatic based on the timing of their food. So, if changing the amount of time in between your meals either makes you feel better or worse, for example, some people when they fast can feel really horrible, noticing things like headaches, nausea, irritability, anxiety, and brain fog. And for others, when they fast, they might feel more clear headed, notice less joint pain, and a drop in weight. And the same can be said for noticing a change in symptoms when we eat more frequently. But you might remember me saying this before. Eating should not change how we feel or function. Eating should just take us from being hungry to not being hungry anymore. And all this other stuff, whether it makes us feel better or worse, is a sign that things could be off with our fuel systems. One of the best ways that we can stabilize this area of our physiology is by increasing our protein. And if for some reason we're struggling to do that with food alone, protein powder can come into the picture and help us to fill that gap. When I have people add protein powder to these types of situations, not only am I looking for a reduction in symptoms around meal times, but another big key for me is seeing that reduction in chronic hunger. Not everyone will get this same benefit from protein powder because it's processed a little bit quicker than whole food protein. But if those hunger levels start to come down, we're noticing less cravings and crashes, then I know we're on the right track and protein powder can be leveraged in this particular situation. Finally, the last situation has less to do with our health and more to do with our lifestyle. And that is adding some protein powder can be convenient. Now, I do think when we're working to improve our health, it isn't about adding a bunch of new things to our current lifestyle. It's about evaluating everything that we have going on, cutting out the stuff that isn't working for us, and leveraging or supporting the things that are. But with that said, the modern world can be tricky, and people have more demands on them than ever before. Because of that, it can sometimes be helpful to use some modern conveniences to fight against some of these modern challenges that are tearing us down. And although we always want to do our best, sometimes it isn't possible for our best to be sitting down to a home cooked meal that we prepared ourselves. Protein powder isn't perfect, but is it a lot better than some of the foods that people might get at an airport or at a fast food restaurant? Yes. And if you're someone who's always on the go and struggles with their schedule, then protein powder could be a great way to fill that gap, help you to avoid some of those more negative choices, and allow you to stay on track in general while supporting your body with that extra protein that it might need. But I hope that you liked today's video and that it gave you some new motivation to make sure that you're hitting your protein goals, and it helped you to determine whether or not protein powder might be a good strategy for you. If you have any questions, of course, leave them for me in the comments below. And if you're wondering about some of the protein brands that I like, you're always welcome to reach out to me. If you like today's information but realize that you need more help, then I'd recommend reaching out to me and my staff about signing up for my online course. The course includes 8 modules that are taught live by me and will be accompanied by weekly question and answer and support calls. Throughout the course, my goal is to help women with Hashimoto's who aren't getting help from their doctor and want to make changes but don't know where to start, go from feeling tired, exhausted, frustrated, and discouraged to making nutrition, lifestyle, and supplement choices with confidence. That way they can feel vibrant, strong, and start loving their life again. So if that's something you're interested in or would like to know more about, then send an email to contact@seattlethyroidhelp.com with the word course in the subject line. My first group of students are going to receive some extra bonuses, so if it's something you're thinking about, don't wait to reach out and get your name on the list. If you'd rather keep learning on your own, then I'd recommend checking out some of the other videos and playlists right here on my YouTube channel, following me on Instagram or Facebook for daily tips and strategies, or by downloading either one of my free downloads, which are listed in the description box below. But that's it for this one. I love you guys. I care about you. Keep doing all the good things that you do, and reach out if there's anything that you need. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so. It really does support the channel, and I appreciate it. But my name is Dr. Bodle. I hope you have a great rest of your week, and I will see you in the next one.